Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of Deity Civic and Peace Education Audio-Visual Series, Episode 10, The Judiciary Branch of the Liberian Government. Let justice be done to all. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this edition. I am your presenter, Dr. Joseph Tomongalode Baba Sr., Executive Director and actor and founder of Decanty Artists Theater Incorporated. Over the past weeks, we have been discussing the different branches of the Liberian government. We discussed about the executive branch, the legislative branch, and today we are discussing the judicial branch of the Liberian government, episode 10. In the last two episodes, we concentrated on the legislative and executive branches of the Liberian government. We discussed the separation of powers among the three branches of government and stated that in principle, no one of the three branches must yield more power than the other two. However, this does not seem to be the case when it comes to the judiciary exercising its constitutional duties. In this episode, we will provide an argument and reasons why the judiciary system of Liberia needs to be improved and provided more logistical and moral support to function effectively. According to the Constitution of Liberia, the 1986 version, Chapter 7, Articles 65 to 75, clearly outlines the powers and functions of the judiciary branch of the Liberian government, vesting the judicial power of the Republic in the Supreme Court and such subordinate courts as the legislature may from time to time establish. Pursuant to this authority, the following subordinate courts are established in addition to the Supreme Court, such as one, the Criminal and Assizes Court, the Circuit Court, the Debt Court, Monthly and Probate Court, Tax Court, Revenue Court, the Commercial Court, National Labor Court, Traffic Court, Juvenile Court, Magistrate Courts. Now, these are all different courts where you take your matter. And also, just to make it plain and simple for all Liberians, the judiciary system of Liberia, or the judicial branch of the Republic of Liberia, is the third branch of government, because we're talking about a republic. And in a republic, there are three separate but equal branches of government: the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary. And today we want to focus on the judiciary. And the reason the judiciary branch of government is very important in Liberia and in any nation for that matter is because this is the branch of government that deals with interpreting the law. If you live in a society, you know, we talk about rule of law. The expression rule of law means that there is no one is above the law. That's what rule of law means, that expression, that's what it means. But in order for you to make sure that no one is above the law in any country, and or in order for you to have law and order in any country, you must have a very good judicial system. A very good judicial system. And the judicial system, since it has to do with making judgments, since it has to do with interpreting the law, since it has to do with passing judgments and stating what punishments, you know, are to be meted out based on the level of crime that was committed, and also in order to control, to reduce criminal acts in the country, in any society. You must have a very good judicial system. And especially in the case of Liberia at this time, it is so critical for us to have a very good judicial system, because there are many people who are in high positions of trust in the country who violated the law. And this branch of government, the judicial system, the judiciary, is responsible to inform the Liberian people what kinds of laws were violated by those that committed criminal acts during the genocide. And because this branch of government has this crucial responsibility to interpret the law and also to inform the Liberian people and the Liberian government what kinds of punishment should be meted out against those who committed these atrocities, the murders, the genocide, etc. That is the reason why the judiciary system or the judicial branch of government is not being given the kind of support that it deserves with respect to logistical support, with respect to logistics, with respect to paying our judges on time, with respect to giving them good immunities that will encourage them not to engage in any form of corruption or bribery. It's so important that the people, the personnel of the judiciary system of Liberia, that it be supported also by the government and also by the people. Because if you want justice, if you want peace in any nation, the judiciary system is very, very important. Unfortunately, they are not getting that kind of support that they need. Also, in a Republican form of government, the principles of the separation of powers is a very important aspect of a Republican form of government. What this means is that each branch of government has its own responsibility to carry out. And because it has its own responsibility to carry out, those responsibilities are very unique, and they're not supposed to crisscross. As a government, the activities of the three branches can be coordinated, but no one branch can kind of interfere in the affairs of the other branch. As for instance, the executive branch of government in Liberia has continuously done with respect to interfering in judicial matters. And when that is done, that is in violation of the principles of the separation of powers, because though the president appoints the chief justice, the associate justices, and the judges in the judiciary system, once those people are commissioned, once they've been confirmed by the Senate, the Liberian Senate, they must be confirmed by the Liberian Senate when appointed by the president. And once they have been confirmed by the Liberian Senate and they have been ceremoniously, inducted into office, they no longer must or can, follow the dictates of the president or the Speaker of the House or the Vice President. Those judges, when confirmed and ceremoniously, inducted, they now have that power of the judiciary to interpret the law independently and unbiasedly. and the president or the vice president or no other person can overturn what the judge, has decided, and or to influence the judge or the associate justice or the chief justice, to influence the decision that is supposed to make or that they've made. According to the principles of the separation of powers, the president, the vice president, the speaker, whoever else is in another branch of government is not supposed to interfere in the functioning, the constitutional duties of the other branch of government. And we will discuss that a little bit more or as we go along, and also to also give you an historical background why these days we have a very powerful presidency that constantly interferes in judicial matters when they're not supposed to. The other thing that is important for Liberians to understand is that unfortunately, after the genocide, we have a situation where certain branches of government, especially two branches of the three branches of the Liberian government, are sabotaging the request of the Liberian people for a criminal court to be established in Liberia. I gave you an example. One, the PRC, the TRC report was submitted since 2009, I think, to the National Legislature. The National Legislature has refused to ratify that document. That's one branch of the government now. The legislative government was given that responsibility because it's their responsibility to make laws. It's the responsibility of the legislative branch of government to make laws. So the TRC report was given to them for that law to be ratified so that we could establish, a criminal court, for war crimes in Liberia. They have refused to do that. Instead, they are making laws and other things to give themselves bonuses and to pay themselves huge sums of money. That monies that, especially hard currency, that can be used to develop the country. They're saying that there's no money to establish a criminal court, but they got money to pay themselves $30,000 bonuses and to pay themselves huge sums of money. So this again is something that the Liberian people must look at very critically and stand up, to make sure that the will of the people will be, respected. And these are people who are elected by you. People who are elected by you who are refusing to carry out what you want them to carry out. So it's important that Liberians understand that fact. Okay, so that's one issue. So the legislative body is sabotaging the establishment of a war crimes court. That's number one. Then two, and of course, for reasons best known to themselves, especially for those who are warlords, former warlords and child soldiers, or who are in the house, in both houses. The other thing is that because the legislative body, approves the national budget and all of that, and they know that the judiciary body of branch of the Liberian government will interpret the law to the Liberian people regarding the laws that they have violated. So because of that, the judiciary is not getting the kind of support that it needs to carry out its function as interpreter of the law. To sabotage, again, that's another sabotage, because the chief justices, the associate justices, and all the judges need to be paid properly, because you're talking about people who are responsible for interpreting the law, who are responsible, people before whom criminal cases come, civil cases, and all of those cases come before them. And the decisions that they make are they are legally binding. And because of that, you don't want them to be distracted by people who come in with bribery and all of that. So they need to be paid on time. They need good fringe benefits. They need all of those things to ensure that there is justice, because the issue of justice, is heavily placed in the hands of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Liberia, the associate justices, the judges in those different courts, are very important people in a democratic, Republican or society. And of course, this is something that we want to kind of capitalize on, so that you understand how important the judiciary system is in Liberia. Then also, as a part of the introduction, I want you to also understand that because our founding fathers, the government of Liberia places, a high respect and regard for the judiciary system, the seat of the Liberian judicial system is referred to as the Temple of Justice. The Temple of Justice. That's how we call that big building where we have all these different courts. That big building is just the central office for the entire judicial system in the Republic of Liberia. We call it a temple. And the word temple is a sacred word. It means that it's a place of sacredness. It's a place of worship, or it's a place where people go, for peace, for comfort, for relief, as you do in the church. Like the church, you go to the church, you go there to pray, you go there for forgiveness, you go there to revere God, you go there to seek peace and justice. It's the same thing with the Temple of Justice. So we refer to that big building where the judiciary system of the Liberian government is located. It's called the Temple of Justice. But I want you also to look at that building and look at it very, very closely. You will see that on the side of the building, is the national seal, the seal of the Republic of Liberia. That seal there represents all of us. In that seal, it has the love of liberty brought us here. It has a ship bringing the settlers. Of course, it has the dove for peace, and it has, tools to show that we labor for what we earn. We labor for it. We are people that work. We believe in the dignity of labor and all of that. And then, of course, you have, then it has Temple of Justice on it. And then below that is the balanced scale of justice. That scale, that meaning that when you go to the Temple of Justice, when you go to any Liberian court, you should expect that the judges, the associate justices, or the chief justice, when presiding over a case, will be very fair, that the law will take its course, that the law will be properly interpreted. That's what that means. And then, of course, you have the inscription, let justice be done to all. Let justice be done to all. So you see, our founding fathers have established for us a very clear-cut, formula by which we should abide, so that Liberia will be a peaceful place, that justice will be done to all, not some, but to all. In reality, this may not be true, excuse me, but yet in principle, and in it is written that indeed we want for justice to be done to all. And then the other thing that you should observe when you go to the temple of justice is the monument of a blindfolded female justice. That meaning that when you go before the court, when you go before the judges, the Liberian judges, the associate justices, or the chief justice, when you have a case and you go there, they're not going to look at you for who you are. That's in principle. Of course, in real life, sometimes it's not like that. But in principle, those people are empowered and they take oath to be fair when they are presiding over a case, because that's what the law requires, that there should be justice for all. And that's what the term rule of law implies, that when you go before that law, there's no one above the law. Even the president, if he goes before a judge, the judge is not going to look at the president because he's a president, but the judge will look at the matter that he's supposed to be interpreting. How does that matter, or how does that case, how does the action of the person that has been accused, how does that action violate the Constitution of Liberia? That's what they're going to be looking at, not a human being. And then it's they're gonna look at also, based upon the law that was violated, what are the penalties that go along with the violation of that particular law? And those penalties are the ones that the judge will give. Yes, the judge are in his or her own discretion, may sometimes lessen, the penalties, or may increase it based on, whatever the situation is. And the only time that the president, for instance, may, get involved and or may change any kind of decision that was passed by the court will be when he's using his presidential privilege to pardon. The president has the right, constitutional right to pardon anyone in the country. He has that right, unless they're doing that. But other than that, the president cannot call the chief justice on the phone and say, I want you to determine this case against John Peter because I don't like him. That is unconstitutional. That is also in violation of the separation, the principles of the separation of powers. And then, of course, we want to talk about the Supreme Court of Liberia. It's the highest court in the land in Liberia. And the head of the judiciary branch of the government of the Republic of Liberia is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. He, along with associate justices of the Supreme Court, are appointed by the President of the Republic of Liberia. And the Supreme Court bench consists of 5 members, the Chief Justice and 4 associate justices, who are ranked in order of seniority based on tenure on the Supreme Court bench. To deliberate a case, there must be at least 3 members of the Supreme Court present to form a quorum. And in case of an emergency, if a quorum cannot be formed, the President of the Republic of Liberia may appoint an ad hoc associate justice to carry out the process. Again, that ad hoc justice will be taken from the circuit court, and it will be a senior member, a senior judge, someone who has tenure, who has been there as a circuit judge for many years, would be the one that the president will appoint. And then, of course, that person will still have to be confirmed by the Senate in order for the person to sit on the Supreme Court bench. But before they can even sit on the Supreme Court bench, to qualify as a member of this Supreme Court bench, one must be a citizen of Liberia immediately at least 10 years prior to appointment, and must be at least 30 years old, must be a counselor at law and licensed to practice in the Supreme Court, and must be engaged in active practice of law for at least 7 years prior to appointment. In addition, to sit on the Supreme Court bench, the Chief Justice and Associate Justices must be commissioned and ceremoniously seated. They must be commissioned and ceremoniously seated. That's a process that it must go through in order to sit on a bench and to preside, to sit on that bench, to preside over any matter for any case. Also, the Chief Justice and Associate Justices must be commissioned and ceremoniously seated, and no one not commissioned and ceremoniously seated must be allowed to participate in the deliberations of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court holds 2 terms annually during the 2nd Monday of March and continuing if the business before the court may require. They are known as the October and March term, respectively. And then, of course, if you want, more information regarding the Supreme Court of Liberia, they have a website from which I got some of this information, and it's called it's brief overview parenthesis open judiciary.gov.lr, okay, parenthesis closes, and you can also get your information regarding that. So we talked about the judicial branch of government, and we talked about the different courts apart from the Supreme Court. We named the courts: the criminal and assizes courts, the circuit courts, debt courts, monthly and probate courts, tax courts, revenue courts, commercial courts, national labor court, traffic court, juvenile court, magistrate court, etc. So you can always get information, about these different courts based on what case you have. And then, of course, we talk about the seat of the Liberian judiciary and all of the different, inscriptions on the building, as you can see from this PowerPoint. And then we come to the challenges of the judiciary. Part A, logistical problems. The judiciary has logistical problems. The court system, is vast. It's not just only in Monrovia. It's all over the country. You got different courts, the circuit courts and stuff all over the country. And of course, they need personnel. The personnel must be trained. There must be people that have legal training that understand the law and all of that in order to make sure that justice is served, because we're talking about justice. When justice is not served in a country, it can create a whole lot of problems. And some of the challenges of the judiciary that we will be talking about: logistical problems, connivance of the executive and legislative branches against the judiciary, with respect to, the budget, things that the judiciary needs that they're not getting. And there's a reason why that is happening. Predominance of the Liberian presidency. Why you say that, the president of Liberia has so much influence, and how sometimes the president, is implicated. And when I say president, not just the present president, but I'm talking about presidents before George Weah and all of that. Why I say that the Liberian presidency is predominant, the executive branch is more powerful than the legislative and judiciary. Lack of independence and sidelines by other two branches of government, the executive and legislative. We'll talk about that. A wrong perception of the Republican form of government by most Liberians due to lack of civic education. Also, that's something we're going to talk about. And then communication barriers, because court matters are litigated in English Liberian courtrooms. I mean, they are litigated in English in Liberian courtrooms, whereas majority of Liberians do not understand or speak English. You're talking about justice. You're talking about meting out justice in the country. Well, majority of the people, when they go to court, most of them don't understand English, but the litigation it occurs in English. So I'm going to court to seek justice, but I cannot speak English. I cannot understand English. It's a problem. That's a communication problem. And then it's also unfair because there are no interpreters. So if someone is pleading the law, they're talking about you, they are accusing you, but you don't have a way to express yourself because you cannot speak a language that is acceptable in the courtroom. So that also is an issue. So how can you dispense justice when I'm being judged? I don't have an interpreter, to interpret what you're saying to me in order for me to freely express myself and explain my side of the story. So sometimes a lot of things go wrong with respect to that because of communication barriers and all of that. Let's come to this. So I'm just going to read a portion of the challenges of the judiciary system of Liberia. There are many challenges, and I just want to share some of those with you. The challenges of the judiciary system are numerous. One of those challenges is the impact of the executive branch over the judiciary and legislative systems of Liberia. Because of this, majority of the citizens of Liberia do not view the judiciary as an independent body. And they may be right to a certain extent in that in recent times, the executive and legislative branches have formed a coalition to rob the Liberian people of hard-earned foreign currency in the form of huge hard foreign currency take-home pays and bonuses laws that both branches legislate, approve, and execute expeditiously as millions of Liberians starve at home while millions others perish in refugee camps and resettlement programs around the globe. Hence, the judiciary branch of government is not to blame totally for the lapse in a dispensation of transparent justice at this time, because it is sidelined and treated as a stepchild. In other words, the judiciary is not given the attention it deserves to reinvent the wheels of justice in our post-genocide society. Accordingly, it is clear why crimes abound in post-genocide Liberian society, because some lawbreakers turned lawmakers and executors, and in some instances, interpreters of the laws of Liberia, have imposed or sanctioned on the sanctuary of hope and justice for the Liberian people. The sanctuary of hope and justice for the Liberian people is the Temple of Justice. And we see that because of the mistakes that Liberian voters have made and they continue to make, we have people who were actively involved in the genocide that took place in Liberia. And you got them, they're saying that the war, quote unquote, has ended, but it has not ended because the genocide is continuing in a different form. The guns are not loud, you cannot hear the guns, but politically and economically, they are extorting, they are really executing the people of Liberia from the huge salaries they pay themselves, as well as those bonuses that could be used to improve the healthcare system of the country, the transportation system of the country, the roads and highways, the educational institutions, the $1.5 million that the speaker has for his allowance. That $1.5 million can help Tuckman University, where in Maryland, where the speaker comes from, can pay the professors, can buy, purchase more technological equipment for the different colleges, etc. Well, unfortunately, this is money that is just going to one individual, whereas that $1.5 million can benefit an entire institution. And you can go down the line with all of them, whether the vice president, whether the speaker, the first deputy speaker, second deputy speaker, all these individuals with all their benefits. And then added to that, you're giving themselves $30,000, for legislative interaction or engagement with the people, etc. All of those things they are part of the genocide. Genocide does not only just mean just killing the people, actively, but you can also do that politically and economically. And this is what is going on in Liberia at this time. And one of the branches of government that is really affected by this is the judiciary, because the judiciary, in the fund analysis, we're talking about even establishing a criminal court. To establish that court, war crime court or whatever it is, this is the same judiciary system that we would depend on to interpret the laws, to make sure that those who are accused are given fair chance, before the law, the code of law, etc. So that's an issue here that we have to deal with. So the Temple of Justice, which is our sanctuary of hope and justice, has been turned into the temple of, of shadow house of injustice. Therefore, it's necessary for us to point out to the Liberian people in the world that the judiciary system has been shortchanged and strangulated, thus making it not as independent as it ought to be, as per the principles of the separation of powers. For an example, The judiciary currently lacks both logistical and moral support from the other two branches of government, as well as from an illiterate majority void of civic education knowledge and the communication wherewithal to voice out their outbursts for transparent justice through the judiciary system of Liberia. So if you strangulate the judiciary system, then the people who are seeking justice cannot get the justice, because to get that justice, if you say these people are doing things to us that we don't like, and they are violating our constitutional rights, it's the judiciary that will interpret that, will say, yes, indeed, your constitutional rights are being violated, and based upon the rights that have been violated, you are entitled to this or you're entitled to that. So that whole process has been blocked. It has been blocked by the action of those who are in the legislature, who oversee the budgets and all of that. So the judiciary is, people complain and say, oh, the judiciary is not independent, it's not this and not that, but they need support. They need to be protected. They need to be protected by you, the people, so that when they interpret the law, based on the law itself, and when they are being threatened, when their lives are being threatened, also the people must also stand up to protect their judges, the associate justices, and the chief justice, because that chief justice will pass a judgment that the executive branch may not like. But if the people support that judgment that was passed by the Supreme Court and they stand behind the chief justice, then the chief justice's life will not be in danger. But we also want to know how come, that in Liberia, that this kind of thing has happened, that the president is so powerful like that, with respect to that. So we go here to this section that says the challenges of the Liberian judiciary system, part B. Here we have President Todman's integration of indigenous Liberians into the body politic of Liberia. What did that do, to make the president powerful, that he can override, that the executive branch can override the powers of the legislative branch and the judiciary branch. We want to talk about that a little bit. Tribal leaders had no clue of Republican form of government and the principles of the separation of powers. Tribal leaders only know monarchical form of governance structure and equated the presidency to a monarchy. So for the traditional people, all along, prior to the establishment of the First Republic of Liberia, the traditional people never saw a president before. They didn't know anything about a president. All they knew about was the king. And the king, once the person was king, they were king for life. And when the person passed, their child, son or daughter will take their place. That's what the people know. They don't know anything about going to go have election for their leaders, standing in line, to vote. They don't know about those kinds of things. And so if you're running a government that requires the people to do those things, then you must inform them. So the point 3 here says, government of Liberia deliberately kept citizens in the dark by depriving them civic education. So this piece of education that I am providing here, the Dati Civic and Peace Education, should be an eye opener for all of you, that there are things that you need to know as citizens of Liberia that you are not being told. That's the responsibility also of the Ministry of Information. They're not just there to write press releases and rebuttals, when accusations are made against a current government. They are also there to do these kinds of things that DATI is providing for you. That's the responsibility of the Ministry of Information in collaboration with the Ministry of Education to educate the Liberian citizens on their rights, etc. Then the other thing is that because the indigenous people don't know anything about a Republican form of government and who the president is supposed to be, they don't know that the president has limited powers, that the president has limited time to be in office, the terms of office for the presidency, they don't know those kinds of things. So the indigenous people, when they see a leader, especially the leader of a country or nation, Liberia, they relate, they kind of equate the president to a monarch. They think that the president is supposed to be there until life. The other thing is that in the tribal courts and all of that, the tribal courts where Liberians who don't speak English are given the opportunity to express themselves in their own native vernaculars and languages. You know, the indigenous people prefer those kinds of courts to the westernized court where they are subjected that they must speak English in order for them to express themselves and their grievances. So that's why, you know, we're recommending that more logistical support be provided for the judiciary, because the judiciary then will have the opportunity to employ, you know, interpreters in the various Liberian vernaculars, so that if a parliament went to court and he had to explain his side of the story, there'll be a appellate interpreter to interpret what the judge or the lawyers are saying English to the person, and the person will also have that opportunity to express themselves, and the interpreter will interpret that in English for the judge and the other people for the record of the court. Then the other issue also that's, you know, putting pressure on the judiciary, and people have a misperception of the role of the judiciary, and blame the judiciary for that being quote unquote independent as it should be, is because of the lack of civic education in Liberian schools. People who are not in power in the country, who attended westernized schools, were not even taught these things that we are discussing with you right now. So they went through first grade to 12th grade, went to LU and those places, and they never learned anything about government and the different functions of the different branches of government, etc. They don't know those things. And that was done by past, you know, administrations, governments of Liberia, to keep the people in the dark. Because if they educated the citizens as we are doing now, to let them know what their rights are, then it will create, you know, then the people will be enlightened, and they wouldn't be pulled by the noses as you are being pulled by the noses right now, because there are so many things that you are entitled to that you're not getting, and you're not able to express yourself. You're not able to get justice, because the temple of justice that represents the judiciary system is also being suppressed. So now this is something that may be a new information for you, but that's some of the reasons why you're not getting the justice you need to get. And we'll go there and let me explain what I mean by that. So for instance, this type of thing with respect to how did the executive branch become so powerful that it's just, you know, doing something like that. I said, according to the Constitution of Liberia, the judiciary is the third branch of the government of the Republic of Liberia. It is charged with a huge responsibility to independently and credibly interpret the laws of Liberia and to adjudicate criminal and civil matters in the best interest and security of the state, as per the principles of the separation of powers, in accordance with a Republican governmental format and the Constitution of Liberia. So that's the responsibility of the judiciary to independently meaning that there should be no interference. And you can see there are a couple of cases, recent cases, where there were seemingly some interferences with what's his name, Samuka's case, with Justice Kabina Jaman's case. You know, these things did not just start today. They just did not start during the current government's term. They started a long time ago, and I just want to give you a historical background regarding how come these things took place. So unfortunately, when it comes to the separation of powers among the three branches of government, most Liberians perceive the judiciary as the least of the three, owing to lack of civic education and due to cultural and political reasons. One key cultural and political reason cited for this misperception is because the head of the judiciary, the Chief Justice, associate justices and judges are appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. Therefore, the general notion is that the Chief Justice and his subordinate justices and judges must conform to whatever the president dictates, even though after confirmation, the Chief Justice, associate justices, and judges are empowered by the authority of the Constitution of Liberia to exercise their duties freely and independently as per the principles of the separation of powers. So after the president, the Constitution says that the Chief Justice, the associate justices, the judges must be appointed by the president, but that doesn't mean that after they've been appointed and confirmed by the Senate and they have been ceremoniously seated as justices and judges of the judiciary, they now have that right to work independently and credibly without any influence. Thus, by not knowing this specific stipulation in the Constitution makes most Liberians to believing that the judiciary does not have equal powers as do the other two branches of government. So you think that because the president appointed these people, so therefore the judges and things are under the executive. No, they are not under the executive. They are under the judiciary. And as per the principles of the separation of powers, once they are under the judiciary, they are not under the president, the executive. The executive has no power, should not interfere in the affairs of the judiciary. Consequently, many Liberians hold the belief that the judiciary is not as independent as it should be because of the predominance of the Liberian presidency. This misperception can be traced as far back as the Tottenham era, or even for over a century prior. However, it is safe to say the misperception of thinking the executive branch of government was more powerful than the other two branches was significantly highlighted during Tottenham's administration that lasted for 27 unbroken years. Now, I want you to listen to this story because this story is very important. According to the Constitution, there's no provision in the Constitution for someone to stay in power for 27 years. That's not a term of office. But certain things happened, and the Constitution was tampered with in order for one man to stay in power for 27 unbroken years. Whereas, as you can see, the Constitution limits the term of office. Initially, when the Republic was established, the term of office for the presidency was 2 years. Then it changed to 4 years. Then it changed to 6 years with what's that? A second term if possible. So the maximum amount of years of someone is supposed to remain in office in Liberia constitutionally is 12 years right now. So even at this period, 12 years constitutionally, how come someone stay in office for 27 years? Let's find out. President William V. Tubman was inaugurated in 1944 as the 18th president of the Republic of Liberia. He died in office in 1971 after a 27-year term of office, thus making him the longest surviving president of Liberia. During his long stay in power, Tubman consolidated his power base by including powerful indigenous leaders from the various ethnic groups in the hinterland of Liberia. The indigenous peoples constituted most of Liberia's, and they still constitute most of Liberia's population. Hence, Tubman strategically integrated them into the body politic to defend himself from being taken from power by the powerful Moroya politicians who resented Kepama's boy. That's what he used to refer to Tubman as Kepama's boy, taking control over their Morovia hegemony. So you had Morovia-based politicians who were very, very powerful, and some of them were from upriver and other places. So below are some reasons for the dominancy of the Liberian presidency over the other two branches of government since that time to the present. So from Tubman time to the present. So let's find out what are some of those points. Let's give some points. Firstly, the active engagement of traditional chiefs in national politics and decision-making eventually gave rise to the "So say one, so say all" slogan that became the order of the day during the Tubman era. During the Tubman era, when the people go in the House, you know, like the members of the Senate and House of Representatives, when they go in the House, if Tubman wanted to say, I want to go for the next 10 years, they will all go in the House and say the president say he wants to be president for the next 10 years. So say one, so say all. That means they finished now. They finished making that decision. That's it. And Tubman had included the indigenous people who didn't know how to read and write, didn't know nothing about the government system. They thinking that Tubman is supposed to be somebody like a monarch. That's what they were thinking. That guy is supposed to be, because that's why they know all their leaders, and then they will stay in power until they die. So now that they've been included into this, you know, Liberian political scenery and stuff, they just think that, they just thought that, well, that's it, you know, just how our ancestors, you know, regarded their leader, the king. That's how for us, Tubman is the king, you know, that's how it is. So secondly, tribal leaders had no clue about the separation of powers and how a Republican form of government is structured and run. However, the only governance structure indigenous Liberians who constitute the majority were or are accustomed to be a monarchical governance system in which the leader wields absolute powers. So now you see the difference. There's a difference between a monarchy and a Republican form of government. The monarchical form of government, the leader has absolute powers. In the Republican form of government, the leader has limited powers based on the principles of the separation of powers. And they didn't understand that. So that's the second thing. Okay. The first thing was so say one, so say all. The second thing now, the traditional people that he invited, all the tribal chiefs and all of that, when they say Tubman is the man we want, and that was it. So say one, so say all. So the third thing was that the government of Liberia deliberately kept the citizens in the dark and deprived them of the right to know how a democratic Republican form of government should govern with respect to the principles of the separation of powers and the active participation of the citizenry in the decision-making processes that affect their daily lives. Consequently, the bulk of the Liberian people regarded President Tubman as a monarch who would rule them until his death. And he did that. He ruled them until his death. That is the culture the indigenous elders knew. They did not know about the presidential term of office. Neither did they know about holding elections after every 4 or 6 years. Subsequently, the Liberian presidency became synonymous to a monarchical form of government instituted within a republican political framework, and the masses culturally succumbed to that concept. Even up to today's date, the people still look at the president of the country as somebody who is supposed to be there forever. But that's not what the Constitution says. So we need to educate the people for them to understand that there's a term of office for the presidency. The fourth thing that I want to bring to your attention regarding how the president of Liberia, the presidency became so influential, over the other branches, is that in modern day Liberia, town, clan, paramount chiefs play parallel roles as did traditional African kings back in the day, but with limited powers. This may be the reason indigenous Liberians tend to relate better to tribal court system than they do with the Western Nile court system. Further, the traditional court system appeals to the indigenous peoples of Liberia because the entire litigation process is carried out in a language that they speak and understand, thus giving them the opportunity to freely express and defend themselves, as opposed to a litigation process during which they rely on someone else or lawyer to serve as their mouthpiece in a foreign language that they do not understand or speak when a court hearing is taking place. So you can see that you can see the injustice there. But that injustice there, that we are blaming on the judiciary is also due to logistical issues and problems. So if we provide enough money for the judiciary, then our court systems, wherever we are, whether in Grand Julia, in Sano, in Bapolo, or Grand Cape Mount, wherever we are, we have traditional interpreters for those people who will go to court so that they can be given the fair day in court. And that's to fulfill, the inscription on the walls of the Temple of Justice that said, "Let justice be done to all." Fifthly, another reason responsible for the executive branch being a powerful force to reckon with in Liberia is due to lack of adequate civic education in Liberian schools. So all our people, we educate them, they come from college, they know their big books and stuff, but they themselves don't know these things that we're discussing now. So these are some of our educated people who speak the English, who supposedly understand the English language, but yet they don't understand the system by which we are governed. So that is an issue also. So these are some of the things that made the president very powerful. So then also you can see why, like for instance, as I said earlier, there are two things that in fact, three factors are barring the Liberian people from establishing a criminal court for war crimes. I said one, the TRC had submitted the report to the legislature, but the legislature has thrown that secret document, which is the will of the Liberian people, in dustbins in the Capitol building. But yet they are making laws to pay themselves huge sums of money. Also, I told you that the judiciary is being sidelined by both the executive and the legislative body. So the people submitted the TRC report to the legislature. The legislature has refused to carry out the mandate of the people that elected them. And then also the executive branch, which is supposed to execute the law and or to even promote it. You know, the executive branch is saying that they will defend the people who committed the crimes. So you can see that the two branches, you know, are blocking our freedoms. They're blocking our justice for the people. And then also, they're not even giving the judiciary what they need to give them, because for fear that the judiciary will come up with adjustments regarding the crimes that were committed. So this is why it's important for you to understand how your government operates, because, you know, of these kinds of things. So that's part of it. So how can the judicial system, these are some of the challenges. So let's see, interference of the presidency in judicial matters, as we said, interference of the presidency in functions of the judiciary, misperception of indigenous Liberians regarding the Republican form of government, deliberate attempt of government to keep citizens in the dark by denying Liberian civic education, and then the effect of Tubman's integration and unification policy on the principles of the separation of powers among the three branches of government, and then of course the evolution of the so say one, so say all slogan and its impact on Liberia's Republican form of government. We just discussed that. Now we want to discuss how the judiciary can be empowered to function independently, because we need that. We need the judiciary. We need them. We need our lawyers. We need our judges. We need our justices to be independent. But in order for them to be independent, we must support them. We must support them financially, logistically. We must support them morally. Let them know we're standing behind them. They should pass the judgment without fear or favor. You know, because they're human beings like you and myself. They have families. They have children. And when they make those kinds of decisions, which are very, very, you know, great decisions to make, you know, they have consequences. And those who are more powerful than they are, you know, may threaten their lives and all of that. So they need support. So one of the ways that here are some suggestions, you know, regarding how we can, you know, help the judiciary to be a very strong and independent branch of the Liberian government, because we need that in post-war society. You need a good judiciary system, you know, to keep law and order in place. So one, better pay and fringe benefits for Chief Justice, Associate Justices, judges, and personnel of the judiciary. They need to be paid properly and be paid on time. Personnel of the judiciary must be paid on time. They can't be broke, they're hungry, their families ain't eat, they ain't pay their rent, you know, and you expect for them to go by rent or judgment. You make them subservient, you know, to bribery, to temptations that will lead them to do things they're not supposed to do. So it's very important that we respect our judges, you know, our justices, the personnel in the temple of justice, you know, the justice system, the judiciary system in the country, you know, that we provide what they need, that logistical support and stuff that they need. More logistical support and state-of-the-art technology for adjudication of cases requiring autopsies and forensic evidences. What sometimes in modern day judiciary, you know, matters and stuff, they need, you know, equipment. They need those things that will determine if somebody did this or did that, blah, 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 you know, whether this person, your child or not your child, you know, testing for paternity test, this and that. Those kinds of things that they're part of the judiciary system, and not just when interpreting the law, but to interpret that law to make sure that it's right. You know, if there's any kind of scientific thing that you need to do, the judiciary needs to be empowered to do it. And they need the wherewithal to do that, you know. And then we need an enhanced manpower development program for personnel of the judiciary. Some of the people there need more training, how to behave as people there, because there are a lot of confidential matters that take place in the court system and all of that. And these people have to be trained uh, to learn about confidentiality, whatever thing it is, you know. They need money too, you know, to do those kinds of things, you know. So to make sure that our judiciary system is good. Employment of vernacular interpreters of the court system for those who do not speak or understand English. That's also very important as part of the justice system. You are judging someone in a language they cannot understand. You want them to express themselves, but they cannot speak the language you want them to express themselves in. So how fair is that, you know, justice system, you know, when there are hurdles, you know, communication, technological and logistical hurdles that prevent the people from receiving justice, you know. So that also is very important. So here is what we got to say about that. We say the roles of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Liberia, as well as the associate justices and judges, are very crucial in meeting out transparent justice in Liberia. As judges, they handle landmark cases and make decisions that affect the lives and livelihoods of citizens and the entire nation. Hence, they must be paid on time, giving fringe benefits commensurate with their workload, and they must be provided the necessary security coverage they need to exercise their duties without prejudice and fear. In addition, some intricate cases require state-of-the-art technology to adjudicate, especially those requiring autopsies and forensic evidences, etc. Also, on many occasions, the government of Liberia employs the services of foreign forensic experts and pathologists to carry out some of its critical court investigations, because sometimes these experts are not available in the judiciary system. Hence, there is a need to invest more funds in manpower development and logistical support for the judiciary system of Liberia. In addition, the judiciary systems needs to expand its manpower development to training local vernacular interpreters to facilitate effective communication for indigenous Liberians who are unable to read, write, speak, or understand the English language that is spoken in our courtrooms, to ensure transparent justice is served everyone who seeks justice and peace in the judiciary system of Liberia. Now that is so very important. And so that's why when it comes to the traditional courts versus the westernized courts, the traditional courts serve the indigenous people better than the westernized courts. One, because of the communication problem. In the traditional courts, they are speaking their own language and things, so they're able to express themselves and all of that. So when a judgment is rendered, you know, they feel more pleased because they had the opportunity to express themselves. Whereas in a westernized court, where they got to deal with a lawyer who is speaking English that they cannot understand, every time they got to ask the lawyer, "What did you say?" or "What did the judge say?" or "What did the other lawyer, the opposing lawyer say?" You know, they don't understand those things. But if you had an interpreter, it would make it easier for these people. In our conclusion, one, we say that the principles of the separation of powers must be respected. Two, when provided civic education, Liberians would be in a better position to support its judiciary system to avoid interference of another branch of government in judicial matters and to ensure independent judiciary system in the Republic of Liberia. Three, we say it should be spelled out that no one is above the law, including the President of the Republic of Liberia. 4, patriotic Liberians must speak up when the principles of the separation of powers are violated. And 5, we want to congratulate justices and judges of the judiciary that brave the storms of public opinion and influence of other branches of government to exercise their constitutional duties without fear or favor. The judges and some associate justices are people of integrity and wisdom and fearless. They pass a decision based upon what the law says, not what somebody outside there with influence wants them to say, and or somebody out there who has money to bribe them wants them to say. So people like those, we must, take our hats off to them, because it takes courage to do something like that, to stand up, for the rights of the underserved, for the rights of the voiceless. And these people are there to make sure that justice is fairly dispensed in the land. Conclusion. In conclusion, it's worthy to note that a function of the judiciary is very important in the maintenance of peace and justice in Liberia. Therefore, the judiciary must be independent in the exercise of its constitutional duties as the third branch of the Liberian government. However, this cannot be obtained if the principles of the separation of powers are not respected and implemented. This may be possible if more Liberians are educated on how a Republican form of government is structured and operates, and how it differs from the monarchical form of governance that they are accustomed to. In this way, the people can provide more support and voice out their opinions whenever they observe any of the other two branches are attempting to overshadow the constitutional responsibilities of the judiciary branch of the Liberian government. Consequently, this may avoid the repetition of most Liberians thinking that the president of Liberia is above the law and or that he can interfere in the functions of the judiciary of Liberia without being checked or questioned by the people of Liberia. Therefore, the government of Liberia and well-meaning Liberian patriots must step up to the plate to provide adequate information about the functions of the various branches of Liberia's democratic and republican governance system. This may empower Liberian voters to actively participate in national decision-making processes that impact their daily lives. Thus, even though the Chief Justice, Associate Justices, and judges are appointed by the President of Liberia, they must remain independent in the exercise of their duty without fear or favor, and they must be supported by the people of Liberia to secure Liberia's democracy. Notwithstanding, despite many hurdles the judiciary branch faces, there are some very patriotic judges and legal practitioners who do not bend the law to please anyone. To such judges, we extend our heartfelt congratulations, and may the law protect the judiciary system of Liberia. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of this episode on the judiciary system of Liberia. In our discussion, we made it clear to you that the judiciary system is very important in the maintenance of peace and justice in Liberia, especially at this time after we've had a bloody genocide in which over 250,000 people were killed. Unfortunately, the different branches of the government of Liberia are saturated with individuals who were directly involved, who financed the bloodshed, and who today are have access to state power as well as access to the coffers of Liberia. These were done through the voting process. And that also materialized because the people of Liberia were not provided the civic education they needed to know that when people commit crimes of this nature, of these natures, they are not to vote. I mean, they are not to run for public office and or to be voted in office. So you made your mistake over the past decades. And now in 2023, there will be elections again. That is why Decanty Artist Theater is providing this service free to you, for you to listen and render a sound decision in 2023. Also want you to understand the reason why we're stressing this with respect to the judiciary is that the judiciary, you want to establish a war and economic crimes court. Once you put that court thing there, the people who will help us to really go through this process successfully so that justice can be served is the judiciary branch of the Liberian government. So they need our support. We must support them. We must support our judges, the chief justice, the associate justices, the judges in the supporting the courts. We must support them so that they will know we have their backs, for them to stand up and interpret the law to the letter, so that those who committed those atrocities can be brought to justice. A word to the wise is quite sufficient. Thank you so much for listening, and we thank all our sponsors and supporters who provide the financial means for us to pay for the airtime to speak to you. And we pray that you will listen to words of wisdom and that you will act appropriately in October 2023 when you go to the polls to vote. The bags of rice that they're giving you now and those few dollars, after a couple of days, those things will be gone. For your lives will still be in danger. You will be suffering. When you're sick, you don't have the money to be airlifted to Ghana or the Ivory Coast to receive treatment. So you need people who are trustworthy, who put the country first, to make sure that we have good hospitals, we have good schools, we have good roads, we can feed ourselves. Those are the kinds of things and kind of people that you need to put in power. Thank you so much for listening. This has been your presenter, Dr. Joseph Tomongalade Baba, Executive Director and founder of Decanty Artist Theater, saying goodbye for now. And thank you so much for listening.